hang out here on Sunday, and I am putting together my 3-year plan, my end of the year plan, and a list. And a list of the qualities that I want to attract in the next person that I'm with. So it's going to be a good scope. This scope was, I've been wanting to do this scope for a while. It's something that I think I've probably figured this out maybe 7 years too late into the game. But I was talking with a guy who comes out here. We've got a porta potty out here because I haven't finished the septic field, right? So I've got like all my piping and stuff like that over there to finish. I just haven't gotten to finish in the septic field. So I've got this porta potty guy that comes out, and to me, he's got this like amazing little business as far as the model, right? So he's got this really super clean truck, and he's got one guy, and he comes on out, and he's got once a week service, and it was like $70, right? And I was like, hey man, I want to bump it up to like 2 times a week service, and the cost went from like 70 to like $90, and I was like, why didn't I do that before? So I get to talking to this guy this week when he came in service, and I'm like, Joe, like, I love your business model. You've got a great one truck, one business, right? And there's a lot of businesses that are like that. There's guys, like I've got a couple buddies that got like a boat in a business, or they've got like, a bobcat in a business, or, whatever it is. But it's like them. They're like a solopreneur. They get to live life a little on their terms, and it's not a bad way to go at all. And I'm talking to Joe, and I'm like, Joe, why are you pricing the way it is? And he's like, dude, this is just the way it is. This is the way they are. This is the way the industry is. And I'm like, why not just dictate like your own price? Like, clearly it costs you more to come all the way out to my place like 8 times a month than it did to come out here like 4 times a month. And he's like, yeah, it does. It's just the industry, that's where the pricing is. And I was like, bro, I wasn't like comparing pricing when I went from like once a week service to like twice a week service. Like, I was just sitting there and I was just like, oh, that thing needs to be serviced more often. And I just called you. I didn't give a shit what the price was, right? And he sat there, and it kind of shocked him, and I pulled out a 20, and I'm just like, this is for today, because like I just want to tip you, but like your pricing's way off, bro. And he sat there, and he was just like, yeah, I mean, it's just what it is, what the industry is. And I'm like, dude, I don't care if you charge me like $150 a month to come out here. Like, it's my credit card's on file. Like, I really don't care. Like, I just want it serviced right, serviced on time, and serviced when it's supposed to be serviced. And he kind of sat there, and he was shocked by it. I had a guy once tell me, he's like, I'd rather do 80% of the work at 100% of my price than do 100% of the work at 80% of my price. A lot of entrepreneurs that get going, they start out like that. They start out with like, we want to get work. I actually had this roof, this deck, this is a Florida sunroom. I'm going to enclose this whole thing and AC it all and stuff later. I had these dudes come out and build this roof, and they had no clue how to bid it. I actually had 2 different people come out, and like, both of them asked me what I thought the quote should be. I don't know. I don't work with wood, right? So I threw out numbers, and they accepted them. And it was like, wow, like super rookie entrepreneurs, just like don't really have established businesses, and they're just throwing it out. Like, it's not you, it's me, bro. Because it's like you didn't figure out what your costs need to be, or what you should be doing, or how you should be quoting it, or even if you should be taking it in general. And so I talked to Joe, and I'm like, my place is pretty far out here. Like, why would you want to service me if I'm so far out? And he's like, well, actually, you're next to the waste station out here. So I get to service you and then empty my truck, and it's really convenient. I'm like, okay, so that kind of makes sense. Maybe you shouldn't double my price to double my service, but you should get it up there a little bit. And he's like, yeah, that makes sense. Take these numbers away, write these down. In your own business, solopreneur status, right? So there's 3 different types of business models, and the one that I teach the most is probably the 1 truck, 1 machine, or the 1 truck, 3 guy, 2 truck, 6 guy model, because those are the businesses that I've built before. I've built businesses up to 7 employees, and I've sold them. And then I've built businesses up to like 3 employees, and I've sold them, and then 7. But pretty much my numbers are always either 1 guy, solopreneur like me, current status, 3, or 7. So those are like, that's where I'm chilling at. With those type of businesses, you need to be pursuing a 50% net profit. Okay, that's after your costs, after your insurance, after wear and tear on your truck. Like, for example, I do that. E1's tires over there, I know I've got them calculated, they cost 5 cents. When I first calculated that out, I was a little shocked. I was a little like, holy cow, I didn't know that, I do 1,000 miles a week. It's $50 a week in tires. Do I put that in an account? No. Should I? Yes. Will I do that in the future? Probably. Like, I probably will put that in an account. But, you don't calculate that. So when I talk about a 50% net, I'm not talking about like you did a job for $1,000 and you bought like plants or materials for like 400 and you're like, hell yeah, I made 600 bucks. Not if you spent your whole day out there, and you got to figure out what you get paid, and you got to make sure that you pay yourself. So after doing all of that, you need to be pursuing a 50% net. You need to land at a 35% net, freaking minimum. I've got a machine that I've got like 30 in plus a head, so maybe 50,000, so half the price, and I bill the same price. And it pisses people off because it's like, well, that's not fair. It's like, no, it's just like I'm not trying to get every single job. I'm just going to go and get the jobs I want, or I'm just going to say no to those jobs. I'm actually headed out to a job now. It's a job that I wouldn't typically do. It's a grading job. It's a pasture grading job. I bid it for 4 days, and I bid it for $4,500, which is like, as far as grading prices go, that's about double the price of grading. But that's kind of what it needs to be. There's guys that would do it cheaper, but if they're going to go out there on a Sunday and get this thing done so this thing completes up on a Tuesday, I don't know. You don't want to take your industry's level of pricing, especially if your industry is an established industry, so it hasn't been around for a long time. So if you're like me, like if you're in lawn care, landscape, that type of stuff, it's been around for 1,000,000 years, or like at least the last part of the century, and there's 100,000 people in it, and none of them know what the hell they're doing, and so the pricing is going to be this, and that. People don't know their perceived value, so they always come down on their pricing. And so because they don't know their perceived value, and because they come down on their pricing, they drop their perceived value. And so when you go out and you're bidding stuff, you want to come out with having high value. Ideally, you want to be on the higher end of the scope. If you're a large business, and we're talking like 20 people or more, at the end of the day, you're really trying to make 10% on every dollar you bring in. So you bring in $1 million, you're trying to make 100,000. But on the small side of the scale, if you bring in 200,000, you're trying to make 100,000. The difference there is that the larger business typically will be more of a hands-off business, people in place, where the owner kind of shows up and looks at reports, as opposed to the other one will be more of a solopreneur where he's actually physically working to make that happen. Nothing wrong with both sides of the coin. But you need to understand on the smaller side what your target revenue or your target net is, and you need to account for what your net is. You got to figure out like what it actually is after wear, tear, parts. It's like E1, it's a 100,000 mile truck. Obviously it's going to have a transmission sometime between now and the next 100,000 miles, guaranteed. And that transmission is going to be $6,000. So if you just take that, okay, if you plan on that being, it's 6 cents a mile for that transmission, period. Because if it lasts 100,000 under warranty, and then after that it's any time it could go, you got to figure 6 cents a mile. So when you put those things in, and you go, okay, E1's got fuel, tires at 5 cents, and transmissions at 6 cents. What else does it have? And you got to put all that stuff together. When you put all that stuff together, on top of that, you've got to have your 35% or your 50%, that type of deal. Where guys like to stay into new stuff, and I agree with that on the machine side. I just don't agree with that. On the truck side, personally. Because trucks are pretty basic. Like, worst thing to a truck is it breaks down, you get it towed. It's not that big of a deal. And you might have to, put a transmission in a truck like E1. E1's a 400,000 mile truck, either way you split it. It might have a couple $1,000 repair bills between here and there. It's like, I just want to be older trucks paid off. I don't want to have any debt. I want to be able to have the flexibility. And here's the other thing is when you have a low-cost business or a low fixed cost business, they call this, the old men call it a small nut. And so, and every old guy that stops by here, he's like, oh, how big's your nut? And you're like, bro, are you serious? Like, it's kind of like, what? But all of them will say, well, how big's your nut? And if you've got your fixed costs small, like, for example, OG Cat, that's my original gangster. That thing costs $950 a month on a 0% interest rate. I go bill today, I'm going to bill $1,200 a day for her today. And I'm going to bill $1,200. I billed $1,200 for her yesterday, and I'm going to do that for another 4 days. But she costs $950 a month. Now she's got wear and tear and all that other stuff that goes with it. But basically, the way I compute that is if I run that machine 1 day a month, it's taking care of its nut, right? So it's all good to go. As opposed to if I had a business that was larger, which I have had. I've had a business that's had $10,000 a month in fixed costs, and it literally takes until like the 20th or the 25th before you've got every bill paid off. and then you're like, okay, whatever we make in the next 5 days is just straight net. And that's really shitty, because you ideally want to start the month out and be like, okay, the first 3 days I paid the rent, I paid this, I paid that, I paid the insurance, you know, and then by day 10 of the month, you're like, any jobs we do, any revenue, any sales, any products we sell is straight net to the bank. And when you're able to do that, you're able to take that net to the bank and pursue the next best opportunities. Look at your business. I'm going to finish out my end of the year goals. This is something I do right as I get to the middle of the year, is I reevaluate how the year's been going. A lot of stuff happened this year that I didn't fully see, but that's kind of last year's stuff. I've kind of come out of that. But I'm going through like, okay, this is what I want to make sure I get done. And then I'm also, just as a reminder, I'm putting out my next 3-year plans. So like, what am I going to be doing? What are my big goals over the next 3 years? Like, for example, for me, buying an airplane is like my #1 3-year goal. Like, I'm buying a fucking airplane. But in conjunction with that, my #1 goal for the end of this year is to get my pilot certification, like #1. So it's like on my list. So it's something to do. I always do halfway through the year. You're basically almost halfway through the year. So I would do that if you get a chance. Also reevaluate where you're at in your industry and figure out if you need to play by the rules that everybody else sets, or if you are ready and if you're ready and bold enough at this point in your life to play by your own damn rules. And I would highly suggest by playing by your own rules, because when you do play by your own rules, the true ballers come out and they acknowledge, because they play by their own rules and they will work with you. So anyway, guys, I'll talk to you later.